Hello and welcome back. We're moving on to 2 Samuel chapter 8. So this chapter details, David's victories, the battles he fought, and all the victories he had. A few key verses I want to highlight, that as I studied, one was in verse 6. The Lord gave David victory wherever he went. The Lord gave David victory wherever he went. The Lord gave David victory wherever he went. It is possible to have victory wherever I go. It is possible to succeed in everything I do. God gave David victory wherever he went. Because God led David to everywhere he went. God led him to the battles he should fight. And so God gave him victory wherever he went. He wasn't going in his own power. God was with him. And God was giving him victories. So this is a possibility we can believe God for. And then, so he defeated many different kings. And because of that, he became famous. His fame spread about because of the victories God gave him. And then in verse 15, David reigned over all Israel, doing what was just and right for all his people. As leaders, either leaders of nations, leaders of companies, leaders in our homes, leaders of units, God is able to give us wisdom so that we do what is just and right for everyone. And we're indeed leaders, not there for ourselves, but servant leaders to lead people that have been entrusted to us. Moving on to chapter 9, is the story of David and Mephibosheth. Here is David in verse 1 saying, "Is there anyone still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake?" It's like, is there anyone in my... He never referred to Saul as his enemy. He never saw him that way. But here he is looking out for someone to bless in the family of a man that made his life so miserable. But he was also doing this because of Jonathan, his friend, Saul's son, who he had made a covenant with. Is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness? And he was told there's still a son of Jonathan, but he was lame in the feet. So he found out Jonathan had a son that was lame in the feet, and he had him brought to his palace. He had him brought to him even though he was lame in the feet, and he shouldn't have even been able to come before the king. David said to him in verse 7, "Don't be afraid, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table." You didn't have to do this. He didn't have to do this. So not only was he bringing the son to eat at his table, he was restoring to him all the land that Saul had. David wasn't... His satisfaction was not in the fact that, hey, now my enemy has died. Now I get to inherit everything that was his. He brings his grandson to his palace and he gives him everything that Saul had. How amazing is that? How impressive is that, really? And Mephibosheth ate at David's table like one of the king's sons. He brought him to himself as if he was one of his sons. There's so much to learn from David. One was the fact that he honored his covenant to Jonathan, even though he was dead. He would not have been held accountable anyway. It was his heart and his love, his selflessness. Like, he gave up all the land that Saul had. He wasn't a greedy man. He was selfless. He was a man of integrity. Chapter 10 now. Here David defeats the Ammonites. In verse 1, in the course of time, the king of the Ammonites died, and his son Hanun succeeded him as king. David thought, I will show kindness to Hanun, just as his father showed kindness to me. And he sent a delegation to express his sympathy to Hanun concerning his father. But then Hanun was told, hey, do you think David just sent this delegation to come and show his sympathy? He sent them to come and spy on the land so that they can come and, wage a war against us. And so this guy decided, so in verse 4, Hanun seized David's envoys, shaved off half of each man's beard, cut off their garments at the buttocks, and sent them away. In verse 5, when David was told about this, he sent messengers to meet the men, for they were greatly humiliated. The king said, stay at Jericho till your beards grow, and then come back. What does this tell you about David as a leader? He cared for his men. He cared for the people he was leading. He looked out for them. He saw how greatly humiliated they were. And it's like, don't worry. Don't worry about your work. Don't worry about your job right now. I want you to stay where you are till your beards have grown. I don't want you to come back in that state, because those men had been greatly humiliated. He cared for his men. He looked out for them. And imagine what this does for the people he was leading. To the guys he did it to, and to others that witnessed or heard about what he did. That built loyalty in the hearts of those people to David, because they know he cares for them. He looks out for them. And in verse 19, so yeah, David had to go to war against the Ammonites for what they did, so he defeated them. And then in verse 19, when all the kings who were vassals of Hadassah saw that they had been routed by Israel, they made peace with the Israelites and became subject to them. So in life, there are some battles you won't even need to fight. When God leads you and gives you victory in some certain strategic battles, the other ones realize, hey, we better come into partnership. We better go subject ourselves. So may God help us to see, what are those strategic things we should take on that makes every other thing give way. Yeah, this was 2 Samuel 8-10, and it's been about 10 minutes. What else did you see in the stories? Do share in the comments. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this video with your friends and family. You never know, this can be encouraging to someone to study their Bible. And this can be your own way of evangelizing and reaching more people for God, to draw more people to study the Word of God. Let's do this together. It's a movement to get people loving the Word of God more. Let's do this together. Join the movement. Thank you. See you next time.